I found my daughter under the Miller's Crossing Bridge at 10:17 p.m. on a Tuesday in October. I know the exact time because I checked my phone twice while I was calling 911, and my hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it into the mud. She was leaning against the West concrete pillar, the one with all the graffiti that says things like, "Class of 09, and worse things I won't repeat. There was trash everywhere. Fast food wrappers, beer cans, a soggy diaper someone had just thrown down there like the world was their personal dump. The smell hit me first. Urine and standing water and something metallic that I realized later was blood. Melissa's head was tilted back against the concrete. Her eyes were half open, but she wasn't seeing anything. There was a cut above her right eyebrow, dried blood down the side of her face, and her left arm was bent at an angle that made my stomach turn over. She was wearing the blue cashmere sweater I'd given her last Christmas. It cost me $140 at Belk, which was more than I'd ever spent on a single piece of clothing for myself, but she'd wanted it so badly when we went shopping together. The sweater was torn at the shoulder, mud all down the front. I dropped to my knees in the wet dirt and grabbed her face with both hands. "Melissa, baby, can you hear me?" Her eyes moved a little, focused on me for just a second. "Mom," she whispered. Her voice sounded like sandpaper. "I'm here. I'm right here. The ambulance is coming." She tried to lift her head and couldn't. I could hear the sirens already, coming down Tunnel Road, but they sounded so far away. I pulled off my jacket and put it over her chest. She was shaking. "Cold?" she said. "I know, baby. I know, just hold on." She gripped my wrist with her right hand. Her fingers were ice. "Mom, it was..." She coughed, and I saw blood on her bottom lip. "It was his mother." I went completely still. "What?" "Patricia." Her eyes closed. "She told Derek. Told him my blood makes him sick. Said I'm..." Another cough. "Poor trash. Contaminating the family." I felt something crack open in my chest. Not my heart. Something colder than that. "Don't talk," I said. "Save your strength." But she squeezed my wrist harder. "He pushed me, Mom." "Colin. He pushed me off the..." The ambulance pulled up on the road above us, lights flashing red and blue across the underside of the bridge. 2 paramedics came scrambling down the embankment with a stretcher and a big orange medical kit. "Ma'am, we need you to step back," one of them said. He was young, maybe 25, with dark hair and the kind of calm voice they train you to use in emergencies. I didn't let go of Melissa's hand. "She's my daughter." "I understand, but we need space to work." The other paramedic, a woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, was already checking Melissa's pulse and shining a light in her eyes. She was asking questions I couldn't focus on. Melissa's eyes had closed again. "Ma'am," the young one said again, and this time he put his hand on my shoulder. I stood up. My knees were soaked through. Mud all over my jeans, my hands, under my fingernails. I watched them load Melissa onto the stretcher, watched them strap her down and carry her up to the ambulance. I followed behind, half running, slipping on the wet grass. "Can I ride with her?" I asked when we got to the top. The gray-haired woman looked at me. "Are you family?" "I'm her mother." "Then yes, get in." I climbed into the back of the ambulance. They had Melissa hooked up to an IV already, an oxygen mask over her face. The young paramedic was taking her blood pressure. The numbers on the monitor didn't mean anything to me, but I could tell by his face they weren't good. "Is she going to be okay?" I asked. "We're taking her to Mission Hospital," he said, which wasn't an answer. The ride took 12 minutes. I sat on the little fold-down seat next to the stretcher and held Melissa's hand the whole time. She didn't wake up. I watched her chest rise and fall under the thin blanket they'd put over her, and I counted every breath like I used to do when she was a baby, and I was terrified of crib death. 1, 2, 3, 4. I got to 317 before we pulled into the emergency bay. They wheeled her through a set of double doors with round windows, and a nurse in pink scrubs held up her hand when I tried to follow. "You'll need to wait here," she said. She pointed to a room off to the left. "Someone will come talk to you as soon as we know more. But I'm her mother. I understand. But we can't have family in the trauma bay. Hospital policy." The doors swung shut in my face. I stood there for a minute, maybe longer, just staring at those doors. Then I turned around and walked into the waiting room. It was exactly like every other hospital waiting room I'd ever been in. Rows of plastic chairs bolted to the floor. A TV mounted in the corner showing the news with the sound off. A vending machine that hummed too loud. And that smell. Antiseptic and floor cleaner and something underneath it that always smells like fear. There were maybe 6 other people waiting. A man with a bloody towel wrapped around his hand. A woman holding a crying toddler. An older couple sitting close together, not talking. I sat down in a chair by the window and pulled out my phone. My hands were still shaking. I had 12 missed calls. 9 from Melissa's number from earlier in the evening before I'd found her. 3 from a number I didn't recognize. I called the unknown number back. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. A man's voice, smooth and professional. "You've reached Colin Hartwell. Please leave a message." I hung up without saying anything. Colin, my son-in-law. The man who, according to my daughter, had pushed her off something. A bridge, probably. Maybe this one. Maybe he'd pushed her and left her there in the mud and the trash to die. I sat there trying to make that make sense. Colin was an attorney. He worked at Patterson and Mills downtown, corporate law, contracts and mergers, and things I'd never fully understood when he tried to explain them at family dinners. He'd been married to Melissa for 4 years. They had a nice house in Biltmore Forest, one of those new builds with the stone facades and the 2-car garages. They went to charity galas. They posted pictures on Facebook of themselves at restaurants I couldn't afford to eat at. He called me Barb instead of Mrs. Crowley, or Mom, which I'd told myself was fine, that it meant he saw me as an equal. He was polite. He always said please and thank you. He sent me a poinsettia every Christmas, and now my daughter was in a trauma bay with God knows what kind of injuries, and she'd told me he pushed her. I looked down at my hands. There was still mud caked under my nails. I scraped at it with my thumbnail and watched it flake off onto my jeans. The automatic doors at the entrance whooshed open. I looked up. Colin walked in. He was wearing a charcoal suit, no tie, the collar of his white shirt open. His hair was perfect. That expensive kind of haircut that always looks good even when you've just gotten out of bed. He saw me immediately and walked over. "Barb," he said. His face was arranged in an expression of concern. "I just heard. Is Melissa okay? What happened?" I stood up. I'm 5'4". Colin is 6'1". I had to tilt my head back to look him in the face. "You tell me what happened," I said. He blinked. "I don't understand." "She told me you pushed her." Something flickered across his face. Just for a second. Then it was gone. "That's ridiculous. Barb, Melissa hasn't been well. You know that. She's been under a lot of stress at work, and her therapist said—" "Her therapist?" I said. My voice came out flat and cold, a voice I didn't recognize as my own. "The one your mother recommended?" Colin's jaw tightened. "Dr. Sheffield is a highly respected psychiatrist." "I'm sure he is." The doors whooshed open again. Patricia Hartwell walked in. She was wearing a camel-colored coat and black leather gloves, and her white hair was styled in that way rich women's hair always is, every strand in place. She was 70 years old, and she moved like a woman who'd never doubted herself for a single day in her life. She looked at me, then at Colin. "Has anyone spoken to you yet?" Colin shook his head. "They said they'd come out when they know more." Patricia walked past me like I wasn't there and sat down in one of the plastic chairs. She took off her gloves one finger at a time and set them in her lap. Colin sat down next to her. I stayed standing. A nurse came through the double doors, the same one in pink scrubs who'd stopped me earlier. She looked around the waiting room, and her eyes landed on our little group. "Family of Melissa Crowley Hartwell?" "Yes," Colin said, standing up. The nurse walked over. She had a clipboard. "Are you her husband?" "I am." "This is my mother, Patricia Hartwell, and this is—" He gestured vaguely in my direction. "I'm her mother," I said. "Barbara Crowley." The nurse made a note on her clipboard. "Melissa is stable for now. We've got her in imaging. Looks like she has a fractured left ulna, Possible concussion, some bruising to her ribs. We're checking for internal bleeding. The doctor will be out to talk to you in about 20 minutes. Can I see her? I asked. The nurse hesitated. She looked at Colin, then back at me. Right now she's in imaging, so no visitors. Once she's moved to a room, immediate family can see her. That's spouse, and she checked her clipboard. Husband has requested limited visitors for now due to her condition. I stared at Colin. You requested what? He didn't look at me. Melissa needs rest. The doctor said too much stimulation. I'm her mother. And I'm her husband, Colin said. His voice was still calm, still polite, but there was steel underneath it. I'm making medical decisions in her best interest. Patricia stood up. She looked at the nurse. Thank you for the update. We'll wait for the doctor. The nurse nodded and walked back through the double doors. I should have screamed. I should have made a scene right there in the waiting room, should have demanded to see my daughter, should have told them all exactly what Melissa had told me under that bridge. But I didn't. I just stood there with mud on my jeans and my daughter's blood still on my hands, and I watched Colin sit back down next to his mother like nothing in the world was wrong. Patricia looked at me. Her eyes were pale blue, the color of ice. Barbara, she said. Her voice was pleasant, conversational. You look upset. Perhaps you should go home and clean yourself up. We'll call you if there's any change. I wanted to tell her to go to hell. I wanted to wrap my hands around her throat and squeeze until that pleasant expression slid right off her face. Instead, I said, I'm not going anywhere. Patricia smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. Suit yourself. She turned away from me and started talking to Colin in a low voice I couldn't hear. They sat there together, mother and son, in their expensive coats with their perfect hair, and I stood 6 feet away like a stranger. Like I hadn't spent 18 years raising Melissa by myself after her father died. Like I hadn't worked 3 jobs to put her through college, cleaning houses during the day and working the night shift at the Waffle House and picking up weekend hours at the Food Lion just to make ends meet. Like I hadn't taken out a second mortgage on my house, the house I'd lived in for 32 years, the house my husband had bought for us before he got sick. So Melissa could go to UNC Asheville and major in music education and not have to work her way through school the way I'd had to. Like, I was nobody. I sat down on the other side of the waiting room and pulled out my phone. I had to scroll back through my contacts to find the number. I hadn't called it in 3 years, not since the Christmas Eve when Dennis had shown up drunk to dinner and Melissa had asked me not to invite him anymore. He was my older brother, 5 years older, and we'd never been close. He'd spent most of his life angry about things I didn't fully understand, nursing grudges, cutting people out of his life for reasons that seemed both too small and too big at the same time. But right now, he was the only person I could think of to call. The phone rang. Once, twice. On the 3rd ring, he picked up. Barb? His voice was rough, like he'd been asleep. Dennis, I said. I need to tell you something. What's wrong? I looked across the waiting room at Colin and Patricia, still sitting there talking in their private little bubble. I found Melissa tonight, under the Miller's Crossing Bridge. Someone hurt her. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. How bad? Dennis asked. Bad enough. She's in the ER now. Another silence. Then, what did she tell you? My throat closed up. I had to force the words out. She said Colin pushed her, and that Patricia told him that Melissa's blood makes him sick, that she's contaminating the family. I heard Dennis take a breath. When he spoke again, his voice was different, harder. Where are you? Mission Hospital. But Dennis, they won't let me see her. Colin put some kind of restriction. I'm coming down there. No, don't. I just needed to tell someone. I stopped. I didn't know what I needed. Barb, Dennis said. His voice was very quiet. I've been waiting 20 years for this call. What? But the line was already dead. I sat there staring at my phone. The screen went dark. I could see my reflection in it. A 61-year-old woman with gray roots showing through her dyed brown hair, bags under her eyes, mud on her face. I looked old. I looked tired. I looked like someone who didn't matter. Across the room, Patricia laughed at something Colin said. It was a soft sound, almost musical. The kind of laugh that belonged in a nice restaurant or a country club, not in a hospital waiting room at midnight while my daughter lay broken somewhere behind those double doors. I put my phone in my pocket and leaned back in the plastic chair. The TV was still showing the news. Something about a storm coming in from the coast. I watched the radar map with its swirls of green and yellow and red, and I thought about Dennis's voice on the phone. I've been waiting 20 years for this call. What did that mean? I didn't know. But sitting there in that waiting room, with my daughter's blood still dried on my hands and her husband and mother-in-law shutting me out like I was nothing, I realized I was about to find out. Dennis showed up at the hospital 40 minutes later. I saw him come through the automatic doors, wearing his old Carhartt jacket and work boots, his gray hair sticking up like he'd just rolled out of bed, which he probably had. He walked straight over to where I was sitting. "You eaten anything?" "No." He pulled a Snickers bar out of his jacket pocket and handed it to me. "Eat." I took it but didn't open it. "They still won't let me see her." Dennis looked across the waiting room at Colin and Patricia. They'd been joined by another woman about 20 minutes ago, my sister Renee. She was sitting next to Patricia, the two of them talking like old friends. Renee had driven up from Charlotte, 2 hours in the middle of the night, and she'd come to sit with Patricia instead of me. "That's Renee over there?" Dennis asked. "Yeah." He made a sound in the back of his throat. "Figures." A doctor came through the double doors. She was in her 40s, dark hair pulled back, wearing blue scrubs with coffee stains on the front. She looked tired. "Family of Melissa Crowley Hartwell?" Colin stood up. Patricia and Renee followed. I stood up too, but Dennis put his hand on my arm. "Wait," he said quietly. The doctor spoke to Colin in a low voice. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I saw Colin nod, saw Patricia's expression stay perfectly neutral. After a minute, the doctor went back through the doors and Colin walked over to us. "The doctor says Melissa's stable," he said. "They're moving her to a private room. She'll be sedated for the next 24 hours while they monitor for brain swelling." "I want to see her," I said. The doctor said immediate family only, for now. "I am immediate family." Colin's voice stayed polite. "Barbara, I know this is difficult, but Melissa needs rest, and the doctor agreed that limiting visitors is best for her recovery. Once she's stronger, of course you can visit." Patricia had walked over to join us. She put her hand on Colin's arm. "Perhaps we should discuss this outside," she said. Her tone suggested this wasn't a suggestion. "There's nothing to discuss," I said. "I'm her mother." Patricia looked at me the way you'd look at a child having a tantrum in a grocery store. Patient. Condescending. "Barbara, I understand you're emotional right now, but Colin is Melissa's husband and her medical proxy. You need to respect his decisions." "Medical proxy?" My voice came out too loud. The man with the bloody towel looked over. "When did that happen?" "When they got married," Patricia said. "It's standard. Not if I'm still alive, it's not." "Actually," Colin said, "in North Carolina, a spouse automatically becomes the primary decision maker unless there's a specific advance directive stating otherwise. Melissa and I discussed this when we updated our wills last year. My hands were shaking again. I shoved them in my pockets. "She didn't tell me that." Patricia smiled. Not unkindly, which somehow made it worse. "There are probably a lot of things Melissa hasn't told you, Barbara. She's been under tremendous stress. Her therapist has been very concerned about her mental state. Her mental state was fine until she married into your family." The smile vanished. Patricia's eyes went cold. "That's an inappropriate thing to say." "You know what's inappropriate? Telling your son that his wife's blood makes him sick." Colin's face went white. "What are you talking about?" "That's what Melissa told me, under the bridge, before the ambulance came." Patricia didn't even blink. "Then I'm afraid Melissa's condition is even more serious than we thought. She's clearly delusional." "She's not delusional. She was terrified." "Of course she was terrified," Patricia said. Her voice was gentle now, sympathetic. "She tried to hurt herself, Barbara. And now she's creating narratives to avoid taking responsibility. It's actually a fairly common psychological defense mechanism. I stared at her. You think she tried to kill herself? I think Melissa has been struggling with depression for quite some time. Dr. Sheffield can confirm that. And unfortunately, sometimes people in that state of mind do desperate things. Renee had walked over. She put her hand on my shoulder. Barb, honey, maybe you should go home. Get some rest. You look exhausted. I jerked away from her. Don't touch me. Renee's face fell. I'm trying to help. No, you're not. You're sitting over there with her. I pointed at Patricia. Like you're part of their family instead of mine. That's not fair. Patricia called me because she was worried about you. She said you seemed unstable. I'm unstable? You're not thinking clearly, Renee said. You never do when you're upset. Remember when Dad died and you accused everyone at the funeral of not caring? This is the same thing. I felt something break loose inside my chest. Get away from me. Dennis stepped between us. Renee, back off. Renee looked at him like she'd just noticed he was there. Oh, great. They called you too? This is perfect. The two family screw-ups together again. I said back off. A security guard had started walking toward us. Patricia saw him and held up one hand. It's fine, officer. Just a family disagreement. We're handling it. The guard stopped but didn't leave. Patricia turned back to me. Barbara, I'm going to say this once, as kindly as I can. You need to leave. You're creating a scene, and it's not helping Melissa. If you truly care about your daughter's well-being, you'll respect Colin's wishes and go home. I'm not going anywhere. Patricia sighed. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. She held it out to me. Then perhaps you should look at this first. Colin brought it from the house. I didn't take it. What is it? Open it. Dennis took the envelope before I could. He opened it and pulled out what was inside. Newspaper clippings. Old ones, yellowed and brittle. I recognized them immediately. Where did you get these? I asked. They were in Melissa's things, Patricia said. She's been researching your family history. I think she wanted to understand where her difficulties might have come from. I looked at the clippings. They were from the Asheville Citizen-Times dated 1984. The headlines were burned into my memory. Local man arrested for DUI. Charles Crowley sentenced to 6 months. Repeat offender dies in single-car crash. My father, the drunk. The man who'd spent my entire childhood stumbling home at 2 a.m., who'd lost every job he'd ever had, who'd finally wrapped his truck around a telephone pole on Highway 25 when I was 22 years old. Patricia's voice was soft. Blood will out, Barbara. Isn't that what they say? I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Dennis put his hand on my shoulder. We're leaving, he said. Now. But Melissa, now. He steered me toward the exit. I looked back once. Colin was standing next to his mother, his face unreadable. Renee was watching me with something that looked like pity, and Patricia was sliding the clippings back into the envelope, one by one, like she was handling precious documents. The automatic doors closed behind us. The cold night air hit my face. She kept those, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. She kept articles about my father for 40 years just so she could use them against me. Dennis didn't answer. He walked me to his truck and opened the passenger door. I climbed in. We sat there in the parking lot for a long time. Through the windows of the ER, I could see Patricia and Colin and Renee. They looked like a real family, united, unbroken. And I was out here in the dark. My phone buzzed. A text message from a number I didn't recognize. Family group chat. I opened it. Renee had created a group message. Colin, Patricia, herself, and me. The message said, Update. Doctor confirms Melissa stable but needs psychiatric evaluation before release. Colin has arranged transfer to private facility in Charleston for comprehensive care. We'll keep everyone posted. I stared at the message. Charleston was 3 hours away. Dennis, I said, what did you mean when you said you'd been waiting 20 years? He put his hands on the steering wheel, didn't start the engine. I mean, it's time to execute the plan. What plan? He looked at me. The one that's going to destroy them. I lost my job 3 days later. Not fired exactly. Just told that my hours were being reduced due to scheduling conflicts, which meant that missing 2 shifts to camp out at the hospital before they transferred Melissa to Charleston had cost me the 30 hours a week I'd been working at the Food Lion. The manager, Kyle, was 28 years old and apologetic. "I'm really sorry, Mrs. Crowley. Corporate's been on us about attendance. If it was up to me, it wasn't up to him. It never was. I cleaned out my locker, an extra pair of shoes, some aspirin, a coffee mug Melissa had given me that said, 'World's Best Mom.' I put everything in a plastic grocery bag and walked out through the automatic doors for the last time. My bank account had $340 in it. Rent was due in 12 days. $875. I sat in my car in the parking lot and tried to do math that wouldn't work no matter how I arranged the numbers. The second mortgage payment was $520 a month. I'd already missed the electric bill. The phone bill was overdue. I drove to Dennis's house. He lived on Riverside Lane in a house that was older than mine and in worse shape. The porch sagged. Paint peeled off the siding in long strips. But it was paid off, which was more than I could say for anything I owned. He was in the garage when I pulled up. The door was open and I could see him standing at a workbench, going through cardboard boxes. "They fired me," I said. He didn't look up. "Expected." "How is that expected?" "Because they're isolating you. Standard playbook." He pulled a green ledger book out of one of the boxes. The cover was worn, the spine cracked. "They take away your resources, your support system, make you look unstable. Then, when you try to fight back, nobody believes you." Nobody believes me now. Dennis set the ledger on the workbench. "Sit down. I need to show you something." There was a metal folding chair near the wall. I sat. The garage smelled like motor oil and old paper, and something else I couldn't identify. Something stale and patient. "Our mothers were friends," Dennis said. "Did you know that?" "No. Back in the 60s, we lived on Fairview Road, 2 houses down from the Hartwells. Mom cleaned houses. Patricia's mother, Dorothy, taught piano lessons. They weren't friends exactly, but they knew each other." He opened the ledger. The pages were yellowed, covered in handwritten entries, numbers and dates and names. In 1975, Mom needed money. Dad had just lost another job and we were about to lose the house. She went to Dorothy Hartwell and asked to borrow $8,000. I stared at him. $8,000? Dorothy gave it to her. No paperwork, just a handshake deal. Mom was supposed to pay it back over 2 years. He flipped through pages. She never did. Dad drank most of it. We kept the house, but the money was gone. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Dorothy never forgot. And when she died in 1991, she told Patricia. Told her the Crowleys were thieves and liars. Told her we were trash who'd never amount to anything." He looked at me. "Patricia's hated us for 34 years, Barb. This isn't new. This isn't about Melissa marrying Colin. This is old poison that's been sitting there waiting." My throat felt tight. "She kept those newspaper clippings about Dad." "Of course she did. She's been collecting ammunition on our family for decades, waiting for the right time to use it." I thought about Patricia's face in the hospital. The cold smile. Blood will out. "What's in the ledger?" I asked. Dennis closed it. "That comes later. First, I need to show you something else." He pulled out another box. This one was full of papers, letters mostly. He handed me a stack. The top letter was addressed to my mother, postmarked June 1968. I recognized the handwriting. Dorothy Hartwell's. I'd seen it before on Christmas cards and thank you notes from back when I was a kid. I opened it. "Dear Margaret," it read, "I wanted to thank you again for helping with the church bake sale. Your lemon bars were quite popular, though I must say the presentation could have been better. Perhaps next time I can show you how we do things at First Presbyterian. I know standards are different in your circles, but it's never too late to learn." I stared at the words. "Your circles." "Keep reading," Dennis said. I picked up another letter, then another. They were all the same. Polite little cruelties wrapped in thank yous and invitations. Backhanded compliments about Mom's clothes, her grammar, the way she raised us, always ending with some version of, "I'm sure you're doing your best with what you have." The last letter was dated February 1975, 2 months before Mom borrowed the money. "Dear Margaret," it said, "I heard about Charles losing his position at the mill. These things happen, of course, especially with men who lack discipline. I do hope you'll manage. If you need anything, within reason, please don't hesitate to ask. After all, that's what neighbors are for." I put the letters down. My hands were shaking again. "They've always thought we were nothing," I said. "Yeah, and now Patricia's doing the same thing to Melissa." Dennis nodded. "She told Colin that Melissa's blood makes him sick because that's what Dorothy used to say about us. That we had bad blood. That we'd contaminate anyone we touched." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "How do you know what Dorothy said?" "Because I heard her say it. In 1984, right after Dad died. She came to the funeral, stood in the back and told Mom that maybe Dad's death was a blessing, that maybe now the Crowley line would end before it could do more damage." He paused. "Mom had a stroke 6 months later. I always thought Dorothy's words helped kill her." I couldn't speak. Dennis pulled out one more piece of paper, a bank statement, dated November 1998. "This is from the charity fund I managed for First Presbyterian, the one Patricia's husband Richard oversaw before he died." I looked at the numbers. They didn't make sense to me. $340,000 disappeared between 1995 and 1998, Dennis said. "Richard Hartwell stole it, set up shell accounts, moved money around, covered his tracks. I found out by accident when I was doing an audit." "Did you report it?" "I tried. Richard threatened to sue me for defamation, said he'd destroy me. I was 40 years old with 2 kids and a mortgage, so I backed off." His jaw tightened. "But I kept copies of everything, every transaction, every forged signature, every fake receipt. I've been holding on to it for 26 years, waiting for the right time." "Why now?" He looked at me. "Because they tried to kill your daughter, Barb. And I'm not waiting anymore." My phone buzzed. Another text from the family group chat. "Renee. Update. Melissa settled in at Magnolia Pines facility. Doctors say she needs at least 30 days of treatment. Colin has restricted all outside contact per medical advice. We'll update when she's ready for visitors." 30 days. In a locked facility 3 hours away. I showed Dennis the message. He read it and handed the phone back. "You're going to lose the house, aren't you?" It wasn't a question. "Probably." "Good." I stared at him. "What?" "Sell it. Everything. Use the money to fight them. Because that's what this is now, Barb. A fight. And you're going to need every weapon you can get." I put the house on the market on a Monday. The realtor, a woman named Jennifer with perfect teeth and a nervous laugh, walked through with a clipboard and kept saying things like, "Great bones," and "lots of potential," while writing down everything that was wrong with it. Roof needed replacing. Foundation had cracks. Kitchen hadn't been updated since 1987. Water damage in the bathroom ceiling from the leak I'd never had money to fix properly. "I think we can list it at $185,000, she said, given the location and condition. I'd bought it with my husband in 1992 for $73,000. We'd paid it down to $48,000 before he died. Then I took out the second mortgage for Melissa's college. Now I owed $62,000 total." "How long until it sells?" I asked. Jennifer did the nervous laugh. "Hard to say. Market's been slow. Could be 2 months, could be 6. I need it sold in 30 days. That's optimistic." "Then drop the price." She blinked. "To what?" "Whatever it takes." We listed it at $169,000. I got an offer 4 days later. $158,000, cash buyer, no inspection, close in 3 weeks. Jennifer called me excited, like this was good news. I accepted. After closing costs and paying off the mortgages, I'd walk away with $87,000. It was more money than I'd ever had at one time in my life. It was also everything I owned. Dennis drove me to the lawyer's office. The lawyer was a friend of his, a man named Robert Chen, who worked out of a converted house near downtown. He was maybe 55, with glasses and a gentle voice that made you want to trust him. "This is going to be complicated," he said after I explained everything. "The statute of limitations on the embezzlement is long past. But if we can prove ongoing fraud, that Colin benefited from the stolen money as an heir, that Patricia knew about it and helped conceal it, we might be able to file a civil suit." "How much will that cost?" I asked. "Retainer is $25,000. Trial costs could run another $50,000 to $75,000 depending on how hard they fight." I felt sick. "And if we lose? You could be liable for their legal fees, possibly another $100,000. Dennis leaned forward. "But if we win? If we win, we could recover the stolen funds plus damages. We could also report Patricia to the IRS for tax fraud. She's been living off that money for 26 years, and we can use the case to challenge Colin's guardianship of Melissa." "How?" I asked. "If we can prove the family has a pattern of fraud and manipulation, we can argue that Colin obtained guardianship under false pretenses, that Melissa was coerced." I looked at Dennis. He nodded. "Do it," I said. Robert pulled out a contract. I signed it, wrote a check for $25,000, watched my nest egg shrink by almost a third in the time it took to sign my name. "One more thing," Robert said. "We're going to file anonymously through a third party at first. Let them think it's coming from somewhere else. Buy ourselves time to build the case before they know it's you." "How long?" Dennis asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Then all hell breaks loose. We filed on a Wednesday. By Friday morning, the first domino fell. Colin lost the Brennan Industries account. It was in the Asheville Citizen-Times business section, 3 paragraphs buried on page 6. Patterson and Mills announced that longtime client Brennan Industries has moved their legal services to Smith & Associates. No reason given for the change. Dennis showed me the article. "That's a $2 million account," he said. "Biggest client Colin had." "How did that happen?" He smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Robert has a friend at Brennan. Mentioned in passing that Colin's family has some interesting financial history. Suggested they might want to distance themselves before it becomes public." I stared at him. "That's karma? That's just the beginning." By Monday, Patricia had been quietly removed from the board of the Asheville Museum of Art. No announcement, just her name disappearing from the website. Dennis said Robert's investigator had sent copies of the charity fund documents to 3 board members. "They don't know what to do with the information yet," Dennis said, "but they know enough to protect themselves. Distance from the Hartwells while they figure it out." I should have felt good about it. I didn't. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff and the ground was crumbling under my feet. The "for sale" sign went up in my front yard on Tuesday. I stood at the window and looked at it. Bright red letters on white. Century 21. Jennifer's smiling face on the bottom. My phone rang. "Renee." I almost didn't answer. Then I did. "Barb, what the hell are you doing?" Her voice was sharp. "Patricia just called me. She said you're selling the house. Melissa's inheritance. Melissa doesn't need a house. She needs a mother who can fight for her." "Fight for her? You're losing your mind. Patricia's trying to help her and you're acting like..." "Like what, Renee? Like someone who found her daughter half dead under a bridge?" Silence. Then, "Patricia says Melissa tried to kill herself. That she's been unstable for months. The doctors agree." "Which doctors? The ones Patricia paid for?" "That's paranoid, Barb. You sound like Dad used to sound." The words hit me like a slap. "Don't. I'm serious. This is the same thing. Making up conspiracies, blaming everyone else, destroying your life because you can't accept reality. Reality is that Patricia has my daughter locked in a facility 3 hours away and won't let me talk to her." "Because you'd make things worse. You always do. You're dramatic and emotional and you never think things through. Melissa knows that. We all know that." My hand was shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. "I'm hanging up now." "Barb." I ended the call, blocked her number, sat down on the couch in the living room of the house I'd lived in for 32 years and tried not to cry. I didn't cry. I just sat there. At 11 p.m., my phone buzzed. Text message from unknown number. "I know what you're doing. You have no idea what you've started. Sophie will pay the price. P." I stared at it. Sophie. She'd gotten Melissa's name wrong. I showed it to Dennis the next morning. She's rattled, he said. Good. She threatened Melissa. She threatened Sophie. She's so used to manipulating people she can't even keep the names straight. He put the phone down. But yeah, she's going to escalate. You ready for that? I thought about the house with the for sale sign. The $62,000 left in my bank account after the retainer. The job I didn't have anymore. The daughter I couldn't see. No, I said. But I'm doing it anyway. Robert called that afternoon. We need to talk. Can you come to the office? We drove downtown. Robert's face was serious when we walked in. Colin's lawyer contacted me, he said. They know someone's investigating the Hartwell finances. They don't know it's you yet, but they're asking questions. And they've filed a countersuit. For what? Dennis asked. Defamation. Harassment. They're claiming someone is spreading false information about the family to damage their reputation. They're asking for $250,000 in damages. I felt the floor drop out from under me. But we haven't even... I know, that's the point. They're trying to scare you off before we get started. He paused. There's more. Colin petitioned the court to extend Melissa's stay at Magnolia Pines. Indefinitely. He's claiming she's a danger to herself. Can he do that? If the doctors agree, yes. What doctors? The ones Patricia's paying? Robert nodded. Exactly. Which is why we need to move fast. If we wait much longer, we might not be able to get Melissa out at all. Dennis leaned back in his chair. So we go public. File everything. Force their hand. That's one option. The other is we negotiate. Negotiate what? I asked. Your silence. They drop the countersuit, let you see Melissa. You drop the investigation. I looked at Dennis. He was staring at Robert like he'd suggested setting the building on fire. No, I said. Barbara. No, they tried to kill my daughter. They're holding her prisoner. And you want me to make a deal? Robert spread his hands. I want you to understand what you're risking. If we go forward and lose, you lose everything. The house money, your reputation, possibly even criminal charges if they push hard enough. And Melissa stays exactly where she is. And if we win? If we win, we get Melissa out. We destroy the Hartwells financially. And maybe, Colin goes to jail. He paused. But the odds aren't great, Barbara. I need you to know that. I stood up, walked to the window. Outside, Asheville looked like it always did. Mountains in the distance. Trees turning colors. People walking dogs and carrying coffee and living their normal lives. I wasn't going to have a normal life anymore. Not after this. File everything, I said without turning around. I don't care what it costs. Colin showed up at Dennis's house on a Thursday morning. I was drinking coffee when I heard the knock. Dennis opened the door. I need to speak with Barbara. Colin stood on the porch in a wrinkled shirt, no tie. His hair was a mess. There was a bruise under his left eye, purple and yellow. What happened to your face? I asked. Can I come in? Dennis stepped aside. We sat in the living room. Colin perched on the edge of the recliner like he might bolt. I stayed standing. My mother hit me, he said. When I told her I wanted to bring Melissa home, she threw a crystal ashtray at my head. He touched the bruise. Then she cut off my trust fund, kicked me out of the house. The firm's restructuring my role. He looked up. And I finally listened to the voicemail. What voicemail? He pulled out his phone. From the night you found Melissa, she called me 9 times. I was at a dinner with my mother. I didn't listen until yesterday. He pressed play. Melissa's voice came through, terrified. Colin, please pick up. Your mother's here. She's saying horrible things. That I'm ruining the family bloodline. Colin, I'm scared. Another message. She won't leave. She keeps saying I need to understand my place. That I should leave you. Colin, where are you? The last message was barely audible. I can't do this anymore. If you don't want me, just say it. Colin stopped it. That was 9:47 p.m. You found her at 10:17. His voice cracked. My mother went to our house that night, spent 2 hours destroying Melissa. Then Melissa left, drove to the bridge, and I think my mother followed her. I couldn't breathe. The psychiatric evaluation was fake, Colin said. Dr. Sheffield admitted it yesterday. My mother paid him $50,000 to falsify records. He played another recording, a man's nervous voice. Patricia said it was for Melissa's own good. I didn't ask questions. Your mother's been a patron for 15 years. You falsified medical documents. If this becomes public, I lose my license. Colin stopped the recording. I found my father's ledgers, too. Proof of the embezzlement. Dates, amounts, everything. My mother knew. He stood. I'll testify against her, but I need your help getting Melissa out of that facility. I stared at him. You chose Patricia. Every single time. I know. You let her lock Melissa up. I know. His face was pale. I love Melissa. And I finally understand what my mother is. I looked at Dennis. He shrugged. Here's what happens, I said. You give us those ledgers, the recording, you testify in court, and you drive me to Charleston right now and get Melissa out. My mother will... I stepped closer. I don't care. You help me get Melissa, or I bury your entire family. Your mother goes to prison. You get named as co-conspirator. Do you understand? Colin went white. I understand. Then let's go. The drive took 2 hours, 40 minutes. Colin drove. Dennis followed in his truck. Magnolia Pines looked like a bed and breakfast. Victorian mansion, magnolia trees. Colin pressed the intercom. Colin Hartwell for Dr. Morrison. The gate opened. Inside smelled like lavender and bleach. A woman in scrubs sat at the desk. Mr. Hartwell, we weren't expecting you. I'm here to discharge my wife. Today. Her smile froze. I'll need to speak with Dr. Morrison. Colin pulled out his phone. I have documentation that the psychiatric evaluation was falsified. If you don't release my wife immediately, I call the police for unlawful imprisonment. Her face went pale. Wait here. 10 minutes later, a man in a white coat appeared. Dr. Morrison. Gray beard. Condescending smile. Mr. Hartwell, I understand there's confusion. No confusion. My wife is leaving. We can't simply... You will. Or I make one call and have this facility investigated for fraud. The smile disappeared. Dr. Morrison nodded to the woman. She picked up a phone. 5 minutes later, Melissa appeared. She looked like a ghost. 15 pounds lighter, hair in a messy ponytail, gray sweatpants, oversized t-shirt. When she saw me, her face crumpled. Mom? I crossed the room and pulled her into my arms. She sobbed against my shoulder. It's okay, I whispered. I've got you. You're coming home. Patricia was arrested on a Tuesday morning in March. Robert called me at 7 a.m. to tell me the FBI had executed a warrant at her house. Fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy to commit kidnapping. The kidnapping charge came from what she'd done to Melissa. Dr. Sheffield's testimony, combined with Colin's recordings, was enough. She'll make bail, Robert said, but her accounts are frozen. The house is being seized as proceeds of fraud. It's over, Barbara. I should have felt triumphant. I just felt tired. Melissa had been living with me for 2 weeks. I'd rented a small apartment on the west side of Asheville, 2 bedrooms, $100 a month. Most of my furniture was in storage. I'd sold everything that didn't fit. She spent the first 3 days sleeping. Then she started having nightmares. She'd wake up screaming, convinced she was back at Magnolia Pines. I'd sit with her in the dark until she fell asleep again. Colin had moved into a motel near the airport. He called every day. Melissa never answered. On day 5, she finally picked up. I gave her privacy, went to my room. But I could hear her voice through the wall, crying, then yelling, then silence. When she came out an hour later, her eyes were red. What did he say? I asked. That he's sorry, that he'll spend the rest of his life making it up to me. She sat down on the couch. That he filed for divorce from his mother. What does that mean? He's cutting her out of everything, testifying against her. He said he chose me. She looked at her hands. I don't know if I believe him. Do you want to? I don't know. The trial took 6 months to prepare. Patricia hired 3 lawyers. They tried to dismiss the charges. claimed Dennis had fabricated the ledgers, suggested that Melissa was mentally ill and had manipulated everyone. The judge wasn't buying it. The fraud charges stuck. The tax evasion stuck. The kidnapping charge was reduced to unlawful restraint, but it stuck. In August, Patricia Hartwell was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. She'd be 72 when she got out, if she lasted that long. I didn't go to the sentencing. Melissa did. Colin sat next to her in the courtroom. I watched from the hallway through the window in the door. When the judge read the sentence, Patricia's face didn't change. She stood there in her expensive suit with her perfect hair and looked like she was attending a garden party. Then they led her away in handcuffs. Melissa came out of the courtroom and found me in the hall. "She didn't even look at me," she said. "Not once." "Good." Colin followed her out. He stopped a few feet away, uncertain. Melissa looked at him for a long moment, then walked over and took his hand. "I'm not ready to forgive you," she said, "but I'm not ready to give up either." He nodded. "That's enough." Dr. Sheffield lost his medical license in September. It made the local news for one day, then disappeared. Renee called me after she saw the article. I let it go to voicemail. She called 3 more times. I finally answered. "I didn't know," she said. "I swear to God, Barb, I didn't know what Patricia was doing. You chose her over me. Because I thought she was helping. I thought you were having a breakdown like Dad used to." I hung up, blocked her number. Dennis said I should forgive her eventually. Maybe I would. Just not today. The money from the civil suit came through in October. $340,000 in restitution, plus $175,000 in damages. After legal fees, I walked away with $380,000, more money than I'd ever imagined having. I gave half to Melissa, told her to do whatever she wanted with it. She cried and said she didn't deserve it. "You deserve everything," I said. "Don't let anyone tell you different." I used some of my half to pay Dennis back for everything he'd done. He tried to refuse. I told him if he didn't take it, I'd donate it to a charity in Patricia's name just to spite him. He took it. The rest went into savings. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to worry about rent or groceries or what would happen if my car broke down. It felt strange, like wearing someone else's clothes. Melissa and Colin moved into a duplex in West Asheville in November. Separate bedrooms. They were trying, she said, taking it slow. Going to couples therapy twice a week. I asked her once if she thought it would work. "I don't know," she said. "Some days I look at him and I still see the man who let his mother lock me up. Other days I see the man who drove to Charleston and got me out." She paused. "I'm allowed to not know yet, right?" "Yeah, honey, you are." Colin came by my apartment on Thanksgiving, brought flowers and a pie from the bakery downtown. He stood in the doorway looking nervous. "Can I come in?" I let him in. We sat at my small kitchen table. He didn't touch the pie. "I'll never stop being sorry," he said, "for what I let happen, for who I was. I know. Melissa says she's not ready to forgive me. I understand that, but I need to know." He looked up. "Do you think she ever will?" I thought about that. About my daughter who'd almost died under a bridge because people told her she wasn't good enough. About the months she'd lost, locked away. About the nightmares she still had. "I don't know," I said. "But I know she's trying. And I know you better not waste that chance." "I won't." He left after 20 minutes. Forgot the pie. I ate a slice standing at the sink and thought about Grace and whether any of us deserved it. On Christmas Eve, Melissa showed up at my door with Colin. She was carrying a box wrapped in green paper. "Open it," she said. Inside was a blanket, green, hand-crocheted with uneven stitches and a few holes where she'd dropped loops. It must have taken her months. "I wanted to replace the one they threw away," she said. "At the hospital. I know it's not as good as yours, but..." I pulled her into a hug. "It's perfect." We had dinner that night, the 3 of us. Nothing fancy. Pasta and salad and store-bought bread. Colin was quiet, careful, like he was afraid to take up too much space. Melissa watched him when she thought no one was looking. After dinner, I walked them to the door. Melissa hugged me hard. "Thank you, Mom, for everything. You don't have to thank me." "Yeah, I do." Colin held out his hand. I looked at it for a moment, then shook it. His grip was firm. "I'm going to be better," he said. "I promise." "See that you are." They left. I stood at the window and watched them walk to Colin's car. He opened her door. She got in. For just a second before he closed it, she smiled at him. Maybe they'd make it. Maybe they wouldn't, but it wasn't my choice to make. I wrapped the green blanket around my shoulders and sat on the couch. The apartment was quiet. Small. Mine. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it. Then I opened it. "This is Renee. I know you blocked me. I just wanted to say Merry Christmas and that I'm sorry. For all of it. You don't have to forgive me. I just needed you to know." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "Merry Christmas." I didn't unblock her. But I didn't delete the message either. Maybe someday. Outside, snow was starting to fall. I watched it through the window. Fat white flakes catching the streetlight. I thought about Patricia in prison. About Dr. Sheffield without his license. About Colin trying to be someone his mother hadn't made him. About Melissa, still deciding. About me, in this small apartment with a crocheted blanket and enough money in the bank to sleep at night. It wasn't a happy ending. Not the kind they put in movies. But it was an ending. And for now, that was enough. If you've lived through something like this, family betrayal, being shut out, fighting for someone you love, I'd love to hear your story. Comment below, or send your experience to the channel. Sometimes just knowing someone else understands makes all the difference.